Everyone's worried about the same thing. What if I don't have good genetics? And honestly, it's the number one excuse people use to justify why they're not where they want to be physically. I'm just not built for this. I've always been skinny. My family is overweight. I don't respond well. I've heard every version of it, but here is the truth and it might sting a little. Genetics matter far less than you think. And most of the traits people blame on genetics, slow progress, plateaus, a soft look, lack of strength, aren't genetic limitations. They are behavioral limitations, training limitations, effort limitations, decision-making limitations. They are the result of inconsistent intent disguised as bad luck. And what makes this even more unfortunate is that a lot of people quit early because they assume they are not built for it. They convince themselves they've lost the genetic lottery, so they stop trying. Or worse, they turn to shortcuts, thinking they need chemical help to get the results they want, when the truth is they've never spent even 6 months executing the basics with real discipline. They give up before they give their body a chance to show what it's capable of. The people who actually built impressive physiques aren't relying on perfect muscle insertions or elite bone structures. They are relying on consistency, intelligent effort, and disciplined execution. I've trained for a decade now, and people sometimes assume I have great genetics. If I did, I'd probably be a professional bodybuilder by now. What I actually have, what I've seen countless others develop, is a system. A simple, repeatable, brutally honest system. And that system produces results across all kinds of bodies, personalities, ages, and backgrounds. Muscle isn't mystical, strength isn't mystical, human physiology is predictable. Apply the right stress, recover properly and progress consistently, and your body adapts every single time. That's biology, not destiny. One of my clients, a police officer, reminds me of this anytime I even start to entertain the genetics excuse. When he came to me, he was around 85 kilos, and unlike what people usually picture at that number, he wasn't just out of shape. He was actually pretty muscular underneath. It was obvious he'd spent years lifting, but that muscle was buried under a thick layer of body fat. His issue wasn't building muscle, his issue was that he had almost zero endurance, both muscular and cardiovascular, and absolutely no structure in his eating habits. He'd been training for 20 years, yet he couldn't run without getting winded, couldn't sustain intensity for more than a few seconds, and couldn't recover efficiently between efforts. The department he wanted to move into required a demanding physical test, and despite carrying a lot of muscle, he was nowhere near meeting the conditioning standards. For him, the issue wasn't strength, it was that his engine wasn't built. And instead of addressing that, he leaned on the genetics excuse. He blamed his metabolism for always being hungry. He blamed his body type for not being built to run. He'd convinced himself he was simply not meant to be lean, or conditioned, or high-performing. And that story kept him stuck exactly where he was. 9 months later, after dialing in intensity, slowly layering in conditioning, adding cardio the right way and finally developing sustainable eating habits, he dropped to 65 kilos, passed every exam and got accepted into a special forces unit, a lifelong dream achieved not because of his genetics, but because he stopped relying on them. He couldn't believe the transformation, and this wasn't a 19-year-old kid. This was a grown man with decades of failed attempts behind him who had convinced himself that his DNA was the problem. It wasn't. His physiology worked perfectly, and once he adjusted the approach, his body responded exactly the way the human body is designed to respond. Which leads me to the first core principle: intensity matters more than anything. Not going through the motions, not stacking up arbitrary sets and reps, not showing up just to check a box. Real intensity means pushing your muscles into the zone where fast twitch fibers are recruited, the fibers with the most growth potential. Most people never even get close to activating them. They stop their sets way too early. They quit when it burns. They rack the weight when the rep speed slows down, but those slow, grinding reps near the end of a set, that's where hypertrophy actually happens. That's where your nervous system is forced to dig deeper, recruit more motor units and expose the muscle to mechanical tension heavy enough to trigger growth. Too many people chase numbers on a spreadsheet, 3 sets of 12, 4 sets of 8, as if the numbers themselves magically create muscle. But the body doesn't grow because you did 12 reps, it grows because the last 2 or 3 reps were brutally hard and forced adaptation. The reality is that most of the sets people count are nothing more than warm-ups. reps. They barely create a stimulus. They never cross the threshold required for meaningful change. The most impressive transformations I've seen, my own included, come from people who train with real intent. Every rep, every set has a purpose. That means 1 or 2 top sets per exercise taken to technical failure in the appropriate rep range. Compound movements like weighted pull-ups, dips, rows and squats shine in lower rep ranges because heavier loads force your body to recruit high threshold motor units, the fast twitch fibers with the most growth potential, and they create massive mechanical tension. Isolation work can go higher in reps, but only when control, tension and effort stay high. High reps only matter when the final reps are brutally difficult. Otherwise, it's just activity, not stimulus. Whether you're lifting weights or training calisthenics, the principle is identical. Progressive overload is the driver. That means increasing load, improving leverage, slowing the rep down with control, or moving to a harder progression. What doesn't drive progress is doing endless reps of variations that are far below your strength level. Light, low resistance movements don't challenge the fibers responsible for real size. In the beginning phase, volume, frequency and learning proper form build the foundation, but once you are past that stage, intensity becomes the priority. Stop chasing higher and higher reps unless your sport demands endurance. If you want muscle, eventually you need to add weight, make the movement harder or both. And here's the deeper piece most people miss. Muscle grows as a response to strength, not strength in the competitive powerlifting sense, but strength in the sense of your nervous system learning to produce more force with the muscle you already have. When you get stronger, whether by adding load, adding reps with the same load, improving leverage, increasing your range of motion, or tightening up your rep quality, you increase the amount of tension your muscle fibers are forced to withstand. Mechanical tension is the primary signal your body listens to when deciding whether to build new muscle tissue. That's why progressive overload isn't optional. If the difficulty stays the same, if the reps stay the same, if the effort stays the same, your body has no biological reason to adapt. Muscle is your body's protective response to increasing demands. Nothing more, nothing less. So, if your goal is to build more muscle, your goal needs to be getting brutally strong on the key lifts you've chosen. Strength comes first, muscle follows, every single time. Second, nutrition is about consistency and purpose, not gimmicks or unnecessary complexity. You don't need 6 perfectly timed meals. You don't need exotic supplements. You don't need to confuse your metabolism. You need repeatable, nutrient-dense meals built around protein, whole foods and appropriate energy intake. Protein drives muscle repair and synthesis. Carbs fuel intense training and glycogen. Fats support hormones and health. That's it. Simple physiology. My most successful clients aren't meticulously tracking every gram. They are eating intentionally week after week with structure and consistency. They prioritize high quality protein, get enough calories when they want to grow and maintain a predictable routine. And here is something people don't realize. When you train with real intensity that truly challenges your body, your appetite naturally adjusts to support that demand. You don't have to shovel down food just because. You don't have to force calories. Your body becomes a much more reliable guide. When you train properly, your hunger cues start to line up with your goals, fueling performance, recovery and growth without needing to micromanage every bite. Third, stick to a system. Stop jumping from program to program chasing new exercises. Novelty isn't progress. And please, stop believing that the weird cable angle an influencer uses is what built their physique. It's not. That stuff is made for views. What actually works is boring, repetitive, unsexy, and that's exactly why most people ignore it. Every week I see coaches giving clients some new science-based cable movement that supposedly activates your lats 153% more than a pull-up or a pull-down. And all it really does is stimulate their mind, not their muscle. It sells people the dream that there's some hidden shortcut that will save them years of effort. But humans don't evolve in 30 days. The physiology of hypertrophy hasn't changed. The movements that built great physiques decades ago still build them today, and they always will. Presses, pull-ups, dips, squats, rows. These movements never stop being effective. It's execution and progression that matter, not novelty. I've seen genetically gifted guys plateau for years because they lacked discipline, while people with average genetics built exceptional physiques by respecting the basics and showing up relentlessly. Finally, none of this matters without patience and attention to detail. Building a truly impressive physique is a long-term project. It requires proper form, full range of motion, intentional contractions, and the discipline to repeat the fundamentals long after the novelty wears off. The people who succeed aren't genetically superior, they are systematically superior. They follow better systems, build better habits, and execute with more consistency over time. Small improvements, repeated over months and years, accumulate into transformations people don't even recognize. You don't need better genetics, you need better systems, better intent, and the discipline to execute consistently. Train with purpose, eat with purpose, progress with intelligence, and the results will come. Genetics will matter less and less as your dedication compounds. And one day, whether it's a year, 2 years, or a decade from now, you'll look in the mirror and realize it wasn't genetics that built you. It was your decisions, your discipline, and your relentless commitment to the fundamentals.